Part 5 of Elon Musk's Twitter files dropping. It just happened a couple minutes ago in a new thread.
Yes, independent journalist Bari Weiss revealing the aftermath of the ban on former President Donald Trump. The document coming to light courtesy of new Twitter owner Elon Musk, today revealing that staffers believe tweets written by former President Trump around the events of January 6th had not actually violated Twitter policies, despite the company saying so at the time. Chief Correspondent Mike Emanuel is live in Washington. What new, Mike, are we learning?
Fascinating, John. Basically going through the steps that led to President Trump's removal in the aftermath of January 6th. The fifth installment of the Twitter files is all about the removal of then President Trump from the social media platform after the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Independent journalist Bari Weiss tweeting a short time ago, quote, "On the morning of January 8th, President Donald Trump, with one remaining strike before being at risk of permanent suspension from Twitter, tweets twice. At 6:46 a.m., the president tweeted about the 75 million people who voted for him, noting, quote, they will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form. And then Weiss reveals internal debate from unnamed Twitter staffers about whether that was incitement. Weiss notes, quote, after January 6th, Twitter employees organized to demand their employer ban Trump. Quote, there is a lot of employee advocacy happening, said one Twitter employee. There was some internal pushback. Quote, I am not seeing clear or coded incitement in the DJT tweet, wrote Annika Navaroli, a Twitter policy official. I'll respond in the elections channel and say that our team has assessed and found no vios or violations for the DJT1. Weiss also notes former President Trump was treated differently than some foreign leaders. Quote, in June 2018, Iran's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei tweeted, Israel is a malignant, cancerous tumor in the West Asian region that has to be removed and eradicated. It is possible and it will happen. Twitter neither deleted the tweet nor banned the Ayatollah. And India's prime minister tweeted in early February 2021, threatening to arrest Twitter employees if they restored accounts that had been critical of him. Twitter did not ban him.
Makes you wonder, if they ban Donald Trump and then leave Ayatollah Khamenei on the site, what would they do if Genghis Khan was still around?
Exactly right. I mean, I guess they're only concerned about American politics.
I guess. Mike, great report. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sandra?
Tom.
Let's bring in Jonathan Turley now, George Washington University law professor and a Fox News contributor. We're all just sort of digging through this right now. Jonathan, what do you think is the biggest news from, I believe, this is dump number 5 that is taking place now. What's the news from it?
Well, what it reveals is a type of hair-triggered environment of people just looking for any basis to ban Donald Trump. Many of us criticized Donald Trump for what occurred on January 6th, but what you see in this company are people who are arguing that virtually any statement that he makes, including a fairly innocuous one, should be treated as a violation. That's really the face of censorship. That's what it means, is that you have people that sit there and they dress up personal bias as a way of protecting others from harm. What I really thought was interesting was one of these exchanges of a woman from China who said, look, I got to tell you, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm from China. And what's fascinating is that that voice was drowned out. But because on the left, censorship has become a certain rite of passage, you know, that it doesn't apply to us. We're not China. We're doing the right thing. And that's the type of blind advocacy and this license that we see in these emails.
Very interesting. As we sort of go through these, we're also noting the fact that we are about to see the beginning of these investigations into Hunter Biden. We know that the newly led GOP House plans to begin these almost immediately. We're expected to learn a whole lot more this week. That being said, what do you believe ultimately we will learn as we do note the way the media has covered every bit of this, Jonathan?
Well, what we've already seen is how the media is not even covering much of these Twitter files. And the reason is that they're heavily invested in this scandal. They're heavily invested in Hunter Biden. You know, the fact is that many of these organizations, including major papers, only recently acknowledged the laptop was authentic 2 years later. But what's disturbing is not the laptop, but what's on it. which are hundreds of emails detailing an influence peddling scheme that is breathtaking. Now, as you know, influence peddling is common in Washington. It is the favorite form of corruption. But I've been in this town for 3 decades, and I've never seen anything come close to what the Bidens did. And so what you're going to see is a full airing of what occurred here. And the media is not going to like it, and they're going to try not to cover it because it's really an indictment, not just of the Bidens, but of the mainstream media, which became this very active ally to the Bidens in bearing the story.
You have a very bold opinion piece in the New York Post stating Biden allies move to intimidate witnesses ahead of GOP's coming Hunter probe. In that, Jonathan, you say this: the Washington Post is viewed as one of the most pro-Biden newspapers in the country and only recently admitted that the Hunter Biden laptop was authentic. Now the paper's detailing a plan that could create an open season on those who might try to substantiate the Biden family's influence peddling. This is not to say these reporters are knowing agents of this campaign, but Democratic operatives clearly wanted people to know about this alliance. Explain, Jonathan.
Well, what was most astonishing to me about the Washington Post story is that this ended up in the Washington Post, that these are the types of scorched earth campaigns that you usually keep under wraps. That's what the Hillary Clinton campaign did, right? They funded the Steele dossier. They even denied that they were funding it to reporters because they didn't want their fingerprints all over it. The other problem is that you could be accused of trying to intimidate witnesses. So suddenly we have this article in the Post where people are giving these long quotes about exactly what they plan to do and that they're targeting people like Tony Bobulinski. Now, this is a key witness, the former business associate of the Bidens. He represents a serious threat to President Biden because he has contradicted what the president has said repeatedly to the American people. And so they say they will be targeting him and others in the coming weeks. Well, that's not a very subtle threat for someone like Bobulinski. They're saying that we're coming after you and anyone who might testify against the Bidens.
All right, Jonathan Turley on that for us, and Twitter Files Part 5. Appreciate you jumping on the breaking news for us. Thank you very much.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.